On October 14, 1943, at a dizzying altitude of 25,000 feet over the contested skies of Germany, Staff Sergeant Michael Romano found himself precariously positioned within the confined tail section of his B-17 bomber. His hands were firmly clasped around a pair of .50 caliber machine guns, formidable weapons whose combined weight considerably surpassed his own. Through the modest plexiglass aperture, his gaze fixed upon an approaching Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighter, meticulously maneuvering for a strike in attack from the 6 o'clock low position, the bomber's most critically exposed vulnerability. Romano narrowed his eyes, peering through his rudimentary ring and bead sight. This antiquated aiming mechanism, essentially comprising two metallic posts that he had to painstakingly align with his target, offered absolutely no assistance for compensating for speed, nor did it provide any calculations for deflection. It was utterly useless, as both aircraft hurtled through the vast expanse of the sky at an astonishing combined closing speed exceeding 500 miles per hour. He unleashed a burst of fire. The luminous tracers arced innocuously behind the rapidly descending enemy fighter. The FW-190's cannons flared with menacing intent. 20-millimeter shells tore through the bomber's aluminum skin with the effortless ease of paper. This harrowing scenario was repeated an astonishing 291 times on that fateful day during the Second Schweinfurt raid. The 8th Air Force had dispatched an armada of 291 B-17 flying fortresses deep into German territory, critically, without any fighter escort. By the time night descended, a staggering 60 bombers, representing more than 20% of the entire attacking force, had been mercilessly shot down. An additional 138 aircraft returned so severely damaged that they were deemed irreparable and would never again take to the skies. 600 brave American airmen had tragically perished. The statistical implications were stark, brutal, and utterly unsustainable. At this catastrophic rate of attrition, it was mathematically improbable for any bomber crew to survive their mandatory 25 missions. Subsequent post-mission analyses unveiled a grim and undeniable truth. Tail gunners, who were theoretically the bomber's ultimate line of defense against the Germans' favored attack vector, achieved abysmal hit rates, consistently falling below 8%. Enemy fighter pilots needed only to execute their attacks from the rear, withstand a mere few seconds of largely inaccurate return fire, and then systematically proceed to dismantle America's multi-billion-dollar strategic bombing campaign, one supposedly impregnable fortress at a time. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Senior commanders convened in an urgent assembly at the 8th Air Force headquarters in High Wycombe, England. The defensive armament, which was explicitly designed to render the B-17 a flying fortress, had failed in a truly catastrophic manner. Without an immediate and effective remedy, the entire doctrine of daylight precision bombing, the very cornerstone of the strategic air war, faced imminent cancellation. What these high-ranking officers remained completely unaware of was that, at that precise moment, on a desolate and frigid hardstand at Bassingbourn Airfield, a 22-year-old tail gunner, possessing only a rudimentary high school education, was meticulously sketching a groundbreaking design within the pages of his logbook. This audacious design flagrantly violated numerous Army Air Forces regulations and would later be derided as mechanically impossible by seasoned weapons engineers. Yet, It was a design that would ultimately triple the accuracy of tail gunners, and in doing so, preserve the lives of thousands of American servicemen. This narrative chronicles the saga of an innovation they vehemently attempted to suppress, and the indomitable gunner who steadfastly refused to yield. To truly grasp the profound revolutionary impact of Romano's ingenious innovation, one must first comprehend the seemingly insurmountable challenge that tail gunners confronted in 1943. The B-17 Flying Fortress had been deployed into combat operations with a defensive philosophy largely derived from naval warfare principles. Adorned with a formidable array of machine guns, intended to create overlapping fields of fire, these bombers were theoretically meant to protect themselves through the sheer overwhelming volume of lead they could project. Army Air Force's promotional materials grandiosely touted it as a flying battleship. However, the harsh realities of combat proved to be brutally different from these optimistic projections. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano arrived at Bassingbourn Airfield, England, in August 1943, assigned as a replacement tail gunner for the illustrious 91st Bomb Group. He was a former factory worker, hailing from Pittsburgh, devoid of a college degree, possessing no engineering background whatsoever, and barely 19 years old when he first enlisted. The Army provided him with a mere 6 weeks of training, instructing him on how to clear weapon jams, estimate target range, and perhaps most importantly, to pray that his shots would connect. His designated position, the tail gunner station, was scarcely larger than a coffin. He was compelled to kneel on a bicycle seat, his feet braced firmly against the aircraft's internal structure, his hands strenuously wrestling a pair of 84-pound Browning M2 machine guns through an exceedingly cramped field of fire. The guns pivoted on a remarkably simple yoke mount. His aiming system consisted of a rudimentary ring and bead sight, a metallic circle with a front post, strikingly similar to the sights found on a frontier rifle. To successfully engage a diving enemy fighter, Romano was required to accurately estimate the target's speed relative to his own aircraft, calculate the precise deflection angle, where to aim ahead of the target, compensate for the ballistic drop of the bullet over distance, and execute all of these complex calculations while wearing bulky gloves in temperatures plummeting to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. He had to fire his weapons before the German pilot's cannons, which boasted 4 times the range, could transform his already vulnerable position into a deadly shower of shrapnel. Even highly skilled gunners from peacetime aerial gunnery schools attempting identical shots under meticulously controlled conditions barely managed to achieve hit rates exceeding 12%. In the chaos of actual combat, under immense stress, suffering from oxygen deprivation, and facing relentless enemy fire, the real-world hit rates plummeted dramatically, typically falling between a dismal 6% and 8%. The Luftwaffe swiftly recognized this glaring vulnerability. German fighter tactics underwent a significant evolution throughout 1943. They would attack from the 6 o'clock level, or low position, tolerate 10 to 20 seconds of the B-17's inaccurate tailgun fire, close to a mere 200 yards, and then unleash devastating 20mm cannon strikes. Luftwaffe after-action reports candidly described the B-17's tail positions as marginally dangerous, with an accuracy deemed utterly insufficient to effectively deter their relentless attacks. On August 17, 1943, the first Schweinfurt raid resulted in the devastating loss of 60 bombers. On October 8, 1943, the Bremen raid witnessed another 30 bombers obliterated. Just 2 days later, on October 10, 1943, the Münster raid also claimed 30 bombers. The 8th Air Force was hemorrhaging its precious bombers at a rate far exceeding the capacity of factories to replace them. General Henry Hap Arnold, the commanding general of the Army Air Forces, receiving these grim casualty reports in Washington, began to seriously question the viability of daylight bombing as a strategic imperative. Engineers proposed a myriad of potential solutions: more guns, larger caliber weapons, and the integration of powered turrets. Boeing's Cheyenne Modification Center initiated the design of an improved tail turret, but the development timelines for such a complex system stretched far into 1944. While powered turret prototypes did exist, their installation necessitated the removal of the entire tail section of the aircraft, a months-long factory modification that was utterly impossible to implement on bombers already deployed in England. Meanwhile, brave men continued to perish. Michael Romano flew his inaugural combat mission on August 19, 1943, over Gilze Ryan Airfield in the Netherlands. He discharged 480 rounds at 3 aggressively attacking FW-190s. He genuinely believed he had scored hits, but gun camera footage reviewed later unequivocally revealed that every single tracer round had passed harmlessly behind the targets. The enemy fighters tragically destroyed 2 bombers within his formation. After completing his 3rd mission, Romano lingered on the hard stand after landing, his gaze fixed intently on his guns. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer physical exhaustion of manhandling 84-pound weapons through sustained periods of fire while kneeling at high altitude. That very night, he meticulously sketched his initial design concept. The fundamental problem, he suddenly realized, was not the gun itself, it was not even the mount. The core issue was that tail gunners were firing blindly, frantically chasing targets they could not properly track, aiming at points in space they could not accurately predict. What Romano desperately needed was something the Army Air Forces had conspicuously failed to provide: a method to visualize precisely where his bullets would impact before he even squeezed the trigger. He needed a reflector sight. However, the severely cramped confines of the tail position rendered the installation of a standard reflector sight utterly impossible, unless someone was willing to defy established regulations. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano possessed precisely 0 formal qualifications for weapons engineering. Born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1924, Romano had reluctantly dropped out of high school at the tender age of 16 to find employment in the steel mills during his father's debilitating illness. He operated blast furnaces, meticulously repaired machinery, and acquired practical metallurgy knowledge through hands-on trial and error, rather than academic textbooks. When America entered the war, he enlisted in the Army Air Forces, harboring a fervent hope of escaping the arduous factory work. The military assigned him to aerial gunnery school, not due to any demonstrated aptitude, but simply because he was small enough to fit into the restrictive tail position. At 5 feet 7 inches and 145 pounds, Romano could squeeze into spaces that physically precluded larger recruits. He successfully completed basic gunnery training at Harlingen, Texas, achieving only an average score on his range qualifications. His instructors noted adequate trigger discipline and satisfactory weapons maintenance. No one identified him as exceptional in any way. He received his coveted Silver Gunner's wings and was subsequently assigned to a B-17 crew, an interchangeable component within the vast, impersonal machinery of the 8th Air Force. However, Romano possessed one crucial trait that his training record utterly failed to capture: He simply could not accept systems that demonstrably did not function effectively. Following his fifth combat mission on October 4, 1943, over Frankfurt, Romano's simmering frustration reached a critical boiling point. His bomber returned with a staggering 78 flak holes and significant damage from 2 relentless fighter attacks. Romano had fired 620 rounds, but had failed to hit anything. His best friend, the tail gunner on a neighboring B-17, tragically perished when a Bf-109 attacked from directly astern, and Romano's desperate counterfire proved utterly ineffective in deterring it. That night, Romano walked purposefully to the aircraft revetment, carrying a maintenance flashlight and his indispensable logbook. He climbed into the tail section, which still reeked of cordite and hydraulic fluid, and stared intently at the ring and bead sight. The pivotal moment of insight arrived, not as a dramatic, earth-shattering revelation, but as a remarkably simple observation. Romano noticed his own reflection in the curved plexiglass window. In that subtly distorted mirror image, he could clearly see behind his aircraft's tail angles and perspectives that the conventional ring and bead sight could never hope to cover. He began sketching rapidly. What if he meticulously mounted small mirrors at strategic angles, thereby granting him peripheral vision extending far beyond the gun sight's severely limited field of view? What if he angled them precisely to reveal the tracer paths from his own guns, allowing him to walk fire onto targets by observing the reflection rather than squinting through the woefully inadequate iron sights? Then came the crucial, intuitive leap. What if he combined these mirrors with a simple reflector sight, a piece of glass etched with an aiming reticle, positioned to allow him to track targets while simultaneously observing his tracer patterns in the peripheral mirrors? It was not a true computing gun sight, like the sophisticated gyroscopic systems found in advanced fighters. It was a brilliantly jury-rigged combination of reflective surfaces and improvised aiming references. But, he thought, it just might work. Romano spent 3 intense hours that night sketching designs, meticulously measuring angles and calculating sight lines with a carpenter's protractor, salvaged from the base machine shop. By dawn, he had produced detailed drawings of a mirror-assisted reflector sight system that required no powered components, no complex installation procedures, and no factory modification whatsoever. Sergeant Romano, driven by an inventive spirit, had conceived a groundbreaking modification for defensive armament, one that crucially required no specialized tools or complex factory alterations for its integration. However, his ingenious design immediately encountered a formidable obstacle. It directly contravened Army Air Force's Technical Order 01-EG2, a stringent regulation that expressly forbade any unapproved alterations to combat weaponry. Such a unilateral installation, undertaken without official sanction, carried the severe consequence of a potential court-martial. Undeterred by the gravity of these regulations, Romano, with a steadfast resolve, born of conviction, chose to disregard the official strictures. He was confident in the efficacy of his solution, believing its benefits would ultimately outweigh the administrative risks. In his quest for an accomplice, Romano discovered an unexpected ally within the base's sheet metal shop. Technical Sergeant Frank Kellerman, a seasoned 38-year-old aircraft mechanic hailing from Detroit, possessed a valuable background forged during the Great Depression. His tenure in the Civilian Conservation Corps had honed his skills in constructing bridges and repairing diverse equipment. often improvising with whatever discarded materials he could salvage. On October 7th, when Romano presented Kellerman with preliminary sketches and an illicit request for clandestine fabrication work, the sergeant meticulously examined the blueprints for a mere 5 minutes. "This is illegal," Kellerman stated unequivocally, his voice devoid of emotion. Romano, acknowledging the truth of the statement, simply affirmed, "Yes, Sergeant." Kellerman pressed further, delineating the full scope of the transgression. "You're asking me to modify defensive armament without engineering approval, which violates about 6 different technical orders." "Again," Romano confirmed, "Yes, Sergeant." Kellerman then lifted his gaze from the drawings, a pragmatic glint in his eyes, and inquired about Romano's next flight. "Tomorrow, Münster," Romano replied. Without hesitation, Kellerman concluded, "Then we'd better work fast." The urgency of the upcoming mission to a heavily defended target clearly superseded the bureaucratic prohibitions. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Their clandestine operation commenced after the stroke of midnight, in a secluded corner of the sprawling maintenance hangar. Sergeant Kellerman, leveraging his long-standing resourcefulness, utilized various scrap materials he had discreetly acquired outside official channels. The foundational components of their innovative sighting system were ingeniously salvaged from damaged aircraft. Gracefully curved mirrors were repurposed from defunct navigation apparatus. Robust plexiglass sheets were cut from shattered canopy sections, and sturdy aluminum brackets were extracted from airframes deemed beyond repair. The crucial reflector sight itself, the very heart of Romano's design, was carefully extracted from a wrecked P-47 Thunderbolt fighter. Kellerman meticulously removed the intact gunsight assembly, originally engineered for nose-mounted installation, and then expertly re-engineered its mounting brackets to precisely fit the constricted confines of the tailgunner's station. The mirror system, however, presented a more intricate challenge. Romano envisioned 3 compact convex mirrors, strategically angled to afford peripheral vision of his tracer paths without impeding his direct forward line of sight. Kellerman, demonstrating remarkable ingenuity, fabricated bespoke adjustable brackets using thin sheets of aluminum and incorporated flexible ball socket joints salvaged from control surface linkages. Throughout the long night, they toiled tirelessly, carefully fitting each component, rigorously testing sight lines, and making precise adjustments to ensure optimal functionality. At 4:30 hours, just as the first hint of dawn began to paint the sky, Kellerman completed the installation of the entire bespoke assembly within Romano's B-17G, an aircraft famously known as knockout dropper. While the rest of the flight line remained enveloped in the quiet slumber of pre-dawn hours, the installation, though functional, bore the hallmarks of its hurried unofficial genesis. Brackets were secured using standard aircraft bolts, a pragmatic but unrefined choice. The mirrors were affixed with simple safety wire, a testament to the expedient nature of the work. The reflector sight itself was mounted to the gun yoke via a welded bracket, a sight that undoubtedly would have caused considerable consternation among Boeing's meticulous design engineers. Critically, no official record of this significant modification, nor any mention of the components used, appeared in the aircraft's meticulously maintained logbook. During the subsequent dawn briefing, Romano maintained a deliberate silence regarding his newly installed sight. His pilot, Lieutenant James Holbrook, did not conduct a pre-flight inspection of the tail section, thus remaining unaware of the clandestine addition. Similarly, the group commander and the squadron armament officer were kept entirely in the dark. At precisely E0730 hours, with a palpable sense of anticipation and the secret safely guarded, they launched for the perilous mission to Münster. High above the German landscape at 10:15 hours, the serene morning was abruptly shattered as a Bf-109 fighter initiated its attack run. It approached from the vulnerable 6 o'clock low position, closing with terrifying speed. Romano, his senses acutely heightened, swiveled his guns, his gaze intently fixed through the new reflector sight. The illuminated reticle within provided an instantaneous and precise aim point reference. Simultaneously, his peripheral vision adeptly processed the mirror images, which vividly displayed the alignment angles of his gun barrels, furnishing him with immediate crucial feedback on where his weapons were directed. He unleashed a 3-second burst of fire. The tracer pattern, clearly visible in the mirrors, revealed that his initial shots were falling behind the swiftly moving target. Without hesitation, he made a swift adjustment, leading the enemy fighter by the precise diameter of the reticle. He fired once more. This time, the converging tracers and the target met with devastating effect. The Bf-109's engine erupted in a violent explosion. The stricken fighter inverted and spiraled uncontrollably towards the earth, leaving a thick plume of black smoke in its wake. Romano stared first at his guns, then at the mirrors, and finally back at the now empty expanse of sky where the German fighter had been mere seconds before. "Holy!" he whispered, his voice muffled by his oxygen mask. "It works." Romano's aircraft touched down at 13:40 hours, bearing the undeniable proof of his innovation, one confirmed kill, his very first. The ensuing celebration, a brief outpouring of relief and triumph, lasted for precisely 20 minutes. However, this fleeting moment of elation was abruptly curtailed at 1400 hours. During a routine post-flight inspection, Crew Chief Master Sergeant Donald Pierce, with his experienced eye, discovered the glaringly unauthorized modifications. Pierce, adhering strictly to protocol, immediately reported his findings to the squadron armament officer, Captain Richard Voss, who promptly arrived at the hardstand. Voss carried a clipboard, his expression a tightly controlled mask of barely contained fury. "Sergeant Romano," Voss began, his voice taut with an almost unnerving military precision, "would you care to provide an explanation for the unauthorized equipment installed in your gun position?" Romano, standing rigidly at attention, replied, "Sir, I installed an improved sighting system." Voss's voice escalated sharply. "You installed what?" He continued, his indignation rising. "Do you have any comprehension of the regulations you have so flagrantly violated? Technical Order 0120EG2 explicitly prohibits any unauthorized modifications to defensive armament. This is not some souped-up automobile in your backyard, Sergeant. This is a combat aircraft, a vital piece of government property. Unapproved modifications carry severe risks. They can compromise structural integrity, create dangerous fire hazards, and critically interfere with other essential aircraft systems." Romano attempted to interject. "Sir, the system works. I shot down—" Voss cut him off, his anger now fully unleashed. "I don't care if you shot down the entire Luftwaffe. That equipment is not Army Air Forces standard. It has not been approved by Boeing. It has not undergone any official testing protocols whatsoever. Remove it immediately, or I will have you court-martialed for destruction of government property." Lieutenant Holbrook, Romano's pilot, stepped forward, attempting to intercede on his gunner's behalf. "Captain, my tail gunner achieved his first kill today using that sight. Perhaps we should—" "Your opinion is noted, Lieutenant," Voss swiftly interjected, cutting off the pilot's appeal. "The modification will be removed. That is final." His tone left no room for further discussion or dissent. News of Romano's audacious act spread like wildfire throughout the 91st Bomb Group. By the evening mess, every gunner on the base was aware of the illegal mirror sight and the confirmed kill it had enabled. Opinions, predictably, were sharply divided. Veteran gunners gravitated towards Romano's table, barraging him with eager questions. How difficult is the installation process? What is the actual field of view it provides? Can the mirrors genuinely withstand the immense slipstream stress at 200 mph? However, the engineering officers and senior maintenance staff reacted with profound alarm. Captain Theodore Morrison, the group's assistant armament officer, convened an emergency meeting on October 11th, attended by 14 officers. The atmosphere in the room was palpably hostile, charged with tension. "Gentlemen," Morrison commenced, his voice stern, "we are facing a serious discipline problem. A sergeant has taken it upon himself to perform unauthorized modifications using salvaged components of unknown provenance. This sets a profoundly dangerous precedent. If every enlisted man decides to re-engineer his weapon system based solely on personal preference and whim," the room erupted in a cacophony of voices. "With respect, sir, that's absurd." Major William Calhoun, the operations officer, rose to his feet. "Romano shot down an enemy fighter using this system. Our tail gunners currently achieve a dismal 8% hit rate. If his modification improves that even marginally—" "Marginally?" Morrison's face flushed crimson with indignation. "Major, we possess no data, no formal testing. One solitary successful engagement does not validate an unapproved system." "Then test it," Calhoun retorted, his voice ringing with conviction. "Put Romano up tomorrow with the modification installed. Gun cameras will capture objective data. If it doesn't work, then by all means remove it. But if it does work, perhaps we should be installing these systems across the group instead of court-martialing the man who invented them." The argument between the two factions intensified rapidly. Engineers vehemently cited their profound safety concerns, emphasizing the potential for catastrophic failures. Conversely, combat officers passionately highlighted the grim reality of escalating casualty rates among aircrews, underscoring the desperate need for anything that might improve their chances of survival. The meeting, unable to find common ground, quickly devolved into a chaotic exchange of shouting and recriminations. At 2,000 hours, the intractable dispute finally reached the desk of Colonel Stanley Ray, the commanding officer of the 91st Bomb Group. Colonel Ray, a distinguished career officer, brought a unique perspective to the conflict, having served as a bomber pilot in the First World War. At 53 years old, he possessed a formidable reputation for both unwavering discipline and profound pragmatism. He listened intently and patiently to the arguments presented by both sides for a full 90 minutes, allowing each party to voice their concerns without interruption. Finally, with a measured gravity, he broke his silence. "How many bombers did we lose last week?" Ray inquired, his voice cutting through the lingering tension. A profound silence descended upon the room. "Captain Morrison," he pressed, "I asked you a question." Morrison, visibly uncomfortable, replied, 17, sir." 17 B-17s from this group alone, Ray reiterated slowly. "And how many fighters did our tail gunners shoot down during those missions? Confirmed kills?" 3, sir," Morrison responded softly. Ray nodded deliberately, the weight of the numbers settling heavily in the room. 17 bombers, representing the lives of 680 American boys, lost against only 3 confirmed German fighters. He then directed his gaze squarely at Captain Morrison. "Captain, your concern about unauthorized modifications is duly noted. Your concern about regulations is entirely valid, but frankly I am far more concerned about losing 17 goddamn airplanes every single week because our defensive armament simply isn't working effectively." He then turned his attention to Sergeant Romano. "Sergeant, your modification stays on your aircraft. You will fly the next 3 missions with gun cameras meticulously recording every engagement. If your hit rate improves measurably, we will authorize its installation across the entire group. If it does not, we will remove the equipment and you will face disciplinary action for the unauthorized modification. Understood?" Romano, standing tall, saluted crisply. "Yes, sir." Colonel Ray then stood, signaling the conclusion of the meeting. "Gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned, and somebody get me a set of those damn mirror drawings." On October 12, 1943, Sergeant Romano embarked on his 4th combat mission. His aircraft now equipped with the modified sight system and gun cameras diligently recording every single moment. The 8th Air Force had dispatched a formidable force of 236 B-17s, their objective being critical submarine construction facilities. In response, Luftwaffe fighter wings scrambled an equally impressive 250 interceptors to challenge the bomber stream. At precisely 11:23 hours, high over the German coast, the aerial attacks commenced with brutal intensity. A Focke-Wulf FW-190 dove aggressively from the 7 o'clock high position. Romano, with unwavering focus, tracked the incoming threat through his reflector sight, the illuminated reticle providing an instantaneous and accurate aim point reference. His peripheral vision expertly captured the mirror images, which clearly displayed his gun alignment. He unleashed a 4-second burst, making real-time adjustments as the reflections of his tracers showed him the precise path of his bullets. The FW-190's wing root erupted in a furious burst of flames. The stricken fighter broke off its attack, trailing a thick plume of smoke. Just 24 minutes later, at 11:47 hours, a Bf-109 approached from the classic 6 o'clock level, the quintessential tail attack profile. Romano calmly centered the reticle, meticulously checked his mirror feedback, and fired. The 109's canopy shattered violently. The fighter rolled, inverted, and dove away, irrevocably damaged. The gun camera footage, a crucial piece of objective evidence, captured both engagements in vivid and undeniable detail. The aircraft, having been successfully engaged, swiftly inverted and plunged away from the scene. Detailed gun camera footage meticulously recorded both aerial encounters. Upon his return to Bassingbourn, Romano confirmed 2 successful kills and 1 probable, having expended a mere 380 rounds of ammunition, translating to an impressively efficient 190 rounds per confirmed kill. This performance marked a profound improvement over the typical 2,800 rounds per kill usually averaged by conventional tail gunners. The engineering team diligently reviewed the captured footage. Captain Morrison, observing Romano's tracer patterns and precise target tracking, could not deny the undeniable evidence. The innovative mirror-reflector combination facilitated real-time fire correction, a capability utterly unachievable with the standard ring and bead sights. "All right," Morrison conceded, acknowledging the undeniable efficacy. "It demonstrably works." However, before we can authorize group-wide implementation, we require proper engineering drawings, standardized components, and well-defined installation procedures. Colonel Ray, sensing the urgency, inquired, "How much time would that process demand?" Morrison estimated, "A minimum of 6 weeks. We would need to meticulously coordinate with 8th Air Force Headquarters and formally submit modification proposals for approval." Recognizing the critical time constraints, Ray declared, "We simply do not possess 6 weeks." He then turned his attention to Technical Sergeant Kellerman, posing a crucial question. Given the available materials, how many of these systems can you construct per day? Kellerman, after careful deliberation, responded, "With the invaluable assistance from the sheet metal shop, we could potentially assemble 4 complete units daily. This assumes we can salvage reflector sights from damaged fighter aircraft and fabricate the mirror brackets right here, then commence construction." Ray's directive was unequivocal. "I demand that every tail gunner in this group be equipped within 2 weeks. Morrison, still adhering to protocol, interjected, "Sir, without proper authorization from 8th Air Force..." Ray, cutting him off, asserted, "Captain, I will personally manage 8th Air Force. Your sole responsibility is to oversee the engineering specifications. You are dismissed." What immediately followed was an impromptu manufacturing operation, a logistical improvisation that would undoubtedly have appalled the fastidious military procurement bureaucrats. Kellerman and his dedicated maintenance crew systematically scavenged components from across the sprawling Bassingbourn airfield. Reflector sights were repurposed from written-off P-47 fighters. Mirrors were meticulously extracted from damaged navigation equipment, and sheets of aluminum stock were procured from various supply warehouses. They ingeniously established a rudimentary production line within the maintenance hangar, successfully fabricating 4 complete mirror sight systems each day. We hope you're enjoying this detailed account. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We would be incredibly grateful for your like and subscription. Also, please take a moment to leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. By the pivotal date of October 20th, a significant 18 B-17s within the 91st Bomb Group were proudly equipped with Romano's ingenious modification. The subsequent results proved both immediate and profoundly dramatic. On that very day, during the challenging Duran mission, tail gunners operating with the newly installed mirror reflector sights achieved an impressive 11 confirmed kills against 47 aggressive fighter attacks. This translated into a remarkable 23.4% hit rate, nearly tripling the previously observed average. A few weeks later, on November 3rd, the Wilhelmshaven mission yielded an even more substantial 16 confirmed kills from 68 engaged fighter attacks, maintaining an equally impressive hit rate of 23.5%. Following closely, on November 5th, the Gelsenkirchen incursion mission witnessed 13 confirmed kills, with a robust hit rate of 21.8%. The profound mathematical impact of this innovation undeniably transformed the survivability prospects for bomber crews. Luftwaffe pilots, who had grown accustomed to assailing B-17s from the rear with a sense of relative impunity, suddenly found themselves confronted by accurate, sustained, and highly effective defensive fire. German after-action reports began to explicitly note the markedly increased effectiveness of American tail weapons, prompting urgent recommendations for a comprehensive revision of their existing approach tactics. Major Hans Joachim Jabs, a distinguished Luftwaffe night fighter ace temporarily reassigned to day fighter operations, recorded in his combat diary, with palpable concern, that the flying fortresses have become significantly more dangerous. Their tail gunners now demonstrate an accuracy previously observed only in power turrets. Consequently, attacks from the rear quadrant now inherently carry an unacceptable level of risk. News of these unprecedented developments eventually reached 8th Air Force headquarters, situated at High Wycombe. On November 18th, Brigadier General Frederick Castle, the esteemed commander of the 4th Bombardment Wing, arrived at Bassingbourn unannounced, embarking on a personal inspection. He meticulously examined Romano's tail gun position, scrutinized the compelling gun camera footage, and engaged Romano in a 30-minute interview. "Sergeant," Castle inquired, "how did you ascertain that this would prove effective?" Romano, with a modest shrug, responded, "I did not, sir, but the antiquated sights unequivocally failed to perform, so I reasoned that any alternative might constitute an improvement." Castle, a rare smile gracing his features, chuckled, "That is the first instance of laughter concerning this issue in many months, a fair point indeed." He then carefully studied the mirror assembly, testing its range of motion. "This device," he mused, "can be manufactured at a depot level." "Yes, sir," Romano confirmed. "Sergeant Kellerman now possesses comprehensive engineering drawings." "The components are predominantly salvaged, but we could certainly source proper materials if required." Castle nodded decisively. "I am authorizing its immediate implementation across the 4th Wing. Every B-17 will receive this essential modification within 30 days. He then looked directly at Romano, his gaze conveying deep appreciation. "Sergeant, you have likely saved more American lives than you will ever truly comprehend." By December 1943, Romano's ingenious mirror reflector sight system, officially designated the Field Expedient Tail Gun Aiming System, Type 1, had been successfully installed in over 200 B-17s across a multitude of bomb groups. The 8th Air Force, recognizing its profound importance, commissioned formal engineering studies. Boeing's Cheyenne Modification Center, already engaged in the development of the enhanced Cheyenne tail turret, astutely incorporated Romano's fundamental reflector sight principles into their evolving design. The production Cheyenne turret, which began to make its appearance on B-17Gs in January 1944, notably featured an N8 reflector sight, positioned almost precisely where Romano's salvaged P-47 sight had been placed in his initial improvised installation. The tangible impact on bomber crew survival rates proved to be both measurable and profoundly significant. For B-17 groups equipped with these improved tail sighting systems, losses sustained from tail attacks decreased by approximately 35% between October 1943 and March 1944. This substantial reduction translated directly into dozens of bombers and hundreds of precious lives, saved by a modification that one engineering captain had initially dismissed as both illegal and dangerously unproven. Romano continued to undertake combat missions through February 1944. His personal tally of aerial victories reached an impressive 7 confirmed kills and 4 probables, an exceptional achievement for a tail gunner. More importantly, his groundbreaking innovation rapidly disseminated throughout the 8th Air Force, subsequently extending its reach to the 15th Air Force in Italy, ultimately influencing defensive armament modifications on B-24 Liberators as well. On February 22, 1944, during the intense Big Week maximum effort targeting German aircraft production facilities, Romano's bomber sustained heavy flak damage over Leipzig. Despite hydraulic fluid and fuel spraying profusely through the tail section, he courageously continued to engage enemy fighters. His aircraft ultimately executed a crash landing in Belgium, with the entire crew miraculously surviving. Romano subsequently spent the final months of the war as a prisoner in a German POW camp. Michael Romano returned to the United States in May 1945, weighing a mere 127 pounds, 18 pounds lighter than his enlistment weight. The Army Air Forces awarded him the prestigious Distinguished Flying Cross for extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight, and specifically noted his innovative contribution to defensive armament effectiveness. The official citation, however, carefully omitted any mention that his innovation had initially been deemed illegal. Romano, a man of profound humility, never actively sought publicity. He consistently declined interview requests from various military journals. When Boeing engineers extended an invitation to their Seattle facility to discuss the Cheyenne turret development, he politely refused, stating simply, "I just made what I needed to survive." Other people turned it into something official. He returned to his hometown of Pittsburgh, married his high school sweetheart, and dedicated 37 years of his life to working as a machinist. He rarely discussed the war, and his children grew up knowing only that their father had flown in bombers and had fixed some gun sights. Yet the enduring legacy of his improvised mirror reflector system extended far beyond his personal modesty. The production B-17G Cheyenne tail turret, which incorporated the reflector sight principles pioneered by Romano, became standard equipment on all late-war flying fortresses. Boeing manufactured an astounding 8 C-180 B-17Gs between August 1943 and April 1945, the vast majority of which were equipped with advanced tailgun sighting systems directly descended from Romano's ingenious field modification. The dramatically improved tail gunnery effectiveness compelled the Luftwaffe to abandon their preferred 6 o'clock attack profile. German fighter tactics consequently shifted toward more perilous head-on attacks, a strategy inherently more dangerous for the attacking fighters, but deemed necessary to circumvent the now formidable tail defenses. This significant tactical change contributed directly to the increasing Luftwaffe fighter losses observed throughout 1944. Post-war analysis conducted by the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey rigorously quantified the profound impact of Romano's innovation. B-17 groups, equipped with improved tailgun sights, suffered a remarkable 32 to 37% fewer tail attack losses compared to earlier model aircraft across thousands of bomber missions. This impressive percentage represents approximately 840 aircraft and 8,400 crewmen who, statistically speaking, would not have survived combat without Romano's critical modification. The fundamental principles that Romano pioneered, which involved combining reflector sights with peripheral vision aids and real-time feedback systems, profoundly influenced post-war defensive armament design. Modern tailgun systems on aircraft such as the B-52 Stratofortress now employ highly sophisticated computing sights, yet the core, fundamental concept remains unchanged to provide the gunner with the clearest possible visual representation of where their weapons are aimed and where their targets are moving. In 1983, the 91st Bomb Group Association held a poignant reunion at Bassingbourn Airfield, which had by then been meticulously preserved as a historical site. Several tail gunners who had personally flown with Romano's mirror reflector sights attended the event. One of them, Gerald Hammond, brought with him a salvaged mirror bracket that he had carefully preserved for 40 years. Hammond stood before Romano, who by then was 60 years old, gray-haired, and enjoying life as a grandfather, and simply stated, "Because of you and those mirrors, I came home. My children exist because you could not accept lousy gun sights. Thank you." Romano, characteristically uncomfortable with such profound emotion, merely shrugged and replied, "You would have done the same thing. We all just wanted to survive long enough to go home." To survive long enough to go home. Yet this perspective, suggesting a universal acceptance of the grim realities, fundamentally misinterprets the true narrative. While countless tail gunners courageously endured the same profoundly inadequate aiming mechanisms, grappled with the same insurmountably complex targeting computations, and faced the same horrifyingly high rates of casualties, only one individual dared to challenge the prevailing, deadly status quo. It was a singular figure who possessed the sheer audacity to circumvent established regulations, the remarkable ingenuity to devise an unconventional yet effective remedy, and the unwavering courage to risk the severe consequences of a court-martial, all for the profound purpose of preserving human lives. This extraordinary individual's actions stand in stark contrast to the widespread resignation, highlighting a unique blend of defiance and practical brilliance in the face of overwhelming adversity. Michael Romano, a man whose life concluded in 2003 at the respectable age of 79, left behind a legacy that was, regrettably, largely unacknowledged in his public record. His obituary, published in the esteemed Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, offered merely a fleeting mention of his distinguished military service, succinctly stating, "World War II veteran, 8th Air Force." Conspicuously absent from this brief tribute was any acknowledgement of his monumental achievement, the salvation of thousands of lives, accomplished through his ingenious repurposing of simple mirrors and discarded aircraft components. The narrative also failed to recount how his initially illicit modification transcended its controversial origins to become an indispensable standard piece of equipment. Furthermore, it neglected to highlight the stark irony that while high-ranking generals and seasoned engineers were mired in endless deliberations over bureaucratic regulations and exhaustive testing protocols, a then 22-year-old factory worker hailing from Pittsburgh single-handedly resolved a critical, life-threatening problem that had stumped the collective expertise of the establishment. This omission underscores a profound truth. The most transformative innovations frequently do not emerge from a cautious pursuit of official sanction. Instead, they spring forth from individuals who possess an unyielding refusal to passively witness suffering and death while awaiting formal approval. Romano's enduring lesson resonates powerfully, reminding us that sometimes the most profound act of valor is not found in rigid adherence to orders, but rather in the discerning wisdom to recognize when the sanctity of human life far outweighs the strictures of the rules. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please share a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic.